Hello, hello. This is my artifact episode number 3707. Is it 3000? 3700? Yeah, 3700. All right. It's really cold. Okay, yeah, it's not really cold by the way, but it's cold because of that. There is a little bit wind with winter air, probably. I don't know how to supposed to explain. All right, it's cold. Yeah. Temperature would be almost like 12 degrees Celsius, 11 degrees Celsius. Oh my god, 11 degrees Celsius temperature. Oh boy, but feel really good. Yeah, like basically in this morning, I'm just. Alright, yeah. Should we start? Alright, yeah. Okay, so today's date is November 19. Sorry, not 19. November 17, 2025. It's been almost like morning at 7:14 a.m. Okay. Alright. Should we jump into the question? Let's go. Alright, where is this question? Okay, yeah. Question is, what if fate and chance were interchangeable? I don't know why. Like these kind of questions are kind of like so. It's not really like this kind of like questions na. It's just like a little bit fucked up. Okay, not fucked up, but it's like that na ki probably I'm not able to understand things. Like I try to understand what is actually fatal and what is actually chance and what is actually interchangeable and things and that. But still, is this thing that ki I think this question is kind of like it's only far more for such a person who is kind of like a bit more expert in understanding the spiritualism and the kind of like somebody the like advanced kind of like a person. Okay, not advanced, like basically who would kind of like who do you like would you not give this answer? Would you not kind of like somebody give the answer for this question? Well, probably it's this thing na, ki regarding about this question. The question says the fate and chance were interchangeable. Like first of all, I just have to understand fate and what is really understand the chance, and then I try to understand how it kind of like a replicate in my life, and does it kind of like a interchangeable or not? Like it's kind of like it's very hard to understand and explain and kind of like it's feel that thing because I don't know. I think that na, ki my knowledge is not really didn't really went to that particular level so that I would kind of like give this answer. But still I'm trying. It's not really that I'm not able to try. Yeah, but who do you think who will have this kind of like perfect answer? Well, I just kind of like copy that answer and kind of like paste it into the kind of like a Gemini and kind of like try to give the answer. Gemini is a AI, by the way, artificial intelligence. Google Gemini. Okay, yeah, and Google Gemini is also kind of like give me a kind of like some random suggestion regarding about the fatal and chance and this and that and that and that. Still, is like basically I somehow understand, but I did not understand at the same time because it's kind of like a feels okay. Why am I kind of like somebody saying this thing that it's very difficult question? No, it's not really a difficult question. It's okay. Yeah, let's just jump into this thing. Okay, let's just understand. Let's just try. Okay, let's just try. But first of all, who do you think who would have this kind of like somebody answer? I would kind of like a think that maybe Gautam Buddha. Probably they might have kind of like some answer. Jesus would be might have kind of like some answer. Albert Einstein would have that kind of like an answer. Because the fatal and chance would be kind of like something are associated with the physics and things like that. Jesus, I don't know. Jesus, like, would Jesus kind of like give the answer? I don't know. Probably they might, but still, if I'm kind of like looking at their past and things like that, they might kind of like look into the hopes and things like that. They might kind of like think about chance. So probably I don't really think that Jesus might gonna give you proper answer. Gautam Buddha might be kind of like gonna give you the proper answer. Leonardo would be kind of like give the proper answer because his life is actually went through a lot of kind of like a chance and fate and things like that. So probably Leonardo might kind of like give the proper answer. Gautam Buddha might be. Why do you think Gautam Buddha kind of like give the proper answer? I don't know. Gautam Buddha is kind of like a prince. He never really kind of like somebody went through all the horrible situation. but still he might have kind of like a simply explanation regarding about how the world work and things like that. But still, the fatal chance and kind of fatal and fate and chance is kind of like a simply represent the how much kind of like their life is kind of like a went through hassle situation, and then and only then that particular person kind of like give the proper answer. So I don't really think that Gautam Buddha should supposed to give the proper answer regarding about that too. Yeah, because his life is kind of like bitterly mellow in rest of the life. Like, not really mellow. Like, I don't really think that Gautam Buddha is never really faced that many kind of like a problem. But still is this thing that the person who kind of like faced a lot of problem, only and only that particular person kind of like give the proper answer regarding about fate and chance and things like that. Okay, yeah. Why do you think Leonardo would be kind of like that perfect person? Well, Leonardo is a kind of like a person who's kind of like a have creative minds and thought process in such a way that kind of like somebody he just went through a lot of horrible situation in his life, good and bad, and kind of like a somebody the like at that time fate and chance would be kind of like a somebody determined by the how much kind of like a somebody went through horrible situation, and Leonardo would be a kind of like a somebody perfect candidate would be that. Probably Elon Musk, but still Elon Musk is not that thing too, because let me tell you one thing, if you need to understand this particular question, you need to kind of like simply face a lot of kind of like a struggle and kind of like a wins and lose and everything. So only and only that particular person give this proper answer. Okay, yeah. Why do you think that? Why do you kind of like simply say this thing that for this particular question you need to be that particular category of that particular? Why do you think that? Like okay, so basically this thing, what is actually fate and what is actually chance is kind of like a determined by the how much that particular person kind of like a dude. Okay, let me give you context. Okay, yeah, if I kind of like give the dice, okay, so would you roll? What kind of like somebody the possibility would gonna came? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, yeah, there are 6 possibility. Okay. Now basically is this thing, if I kind of like roll the dice, it would get kind of like give 2, right? 2. It would be kind of like give me result as a 3. It would be like kind of like a random number would kind of like somebody give, right? Yeah. So basically what exactly is this thing? It is a chance. Okay. That we don't really understand what is actually the next number would gonna come. Okay, that is called kind of like some chance. Okay, yeah. Now fate is kind of like a represent by the everything should supposed to be fixed. So basically is this thing, every time you roll, you kind of like a think that everything is already written. Okay, you don't know that, but kind of like some universe know that what kind of like some dice would kind of like a roll at the end of the result. So this would be kind of like somebody create a very complex problem. Like basically what I'm trying to tell you, dice is kind of like a very simple thing that I try to explain, but still is this thing rolling out the dice every single time, it kind of like a represent that life is kind of like a went through multiple kind of like a somebody situation where up and down kind of like somebody lose and wins and things and that. Okay, you might not understand would you kind of like a win, or you might not understand would you gonna kind of like lose, but is this thing that it's your chance, but from the fatal point of perspective, it's already decide that what kind of like a win happened. Now regarding about the question is that two different kind of like a complex thing are kind of like interchangeable, like chance and fate are kind of like a went into the interchangeable, then this might be kind of like a create even more complex system, and that's more kind of like really fucked up. Okay, and that's kind of like a thing that now only and only kind of like such a person who kind of like give the answer, who kind of like went through very very horrible situation in his rest of the period of lifetime. Okay, yeah, and only that particular person who's kind of like somebody give that particular answer. Okay, yeah. Did I went through that horrible situation? Well, probably I am not that thing. Like basically, if I'm gonna say that I went through kind of like a horrible situation, I went through kind of like a trouble, but I kind of like figure it out. I find out. I kind of like fix my mistake and things like that. Okay, yeah, and try not to do that thing mistake again. Okay, and basically this is how I learn, and this is how I kind of like simply replicate in my life. Okay, yeah. But let me tell you one thing. I never really faced that much kind of like some problem, so that I would kind of like simply give the answer regarding about what if the fate and chance would be kind of like interchangeable, and what would be kind of like something happen, because I don't really understand the gravity of it. I don't really understand what is actually the chance and fate and things like that, because the result is not the came by kind of like every single day. You kind of like put the effort, lot of effort, and it went failure, and when you went to failure, then probably what is actually happened that you might not really feel really good to kind of like somebody stand up and kind of like do this thing again. Some people do that. I will gonna do that, but how many times? Yeah, like maybe just like 1 time, 2 time, 3 time, 4 time, 5 time, 1,000 time. Okay, but then after that, like basically every problem and every kind of like a consequences comes from a very different perspective and reality, and this is kind of like very difficult to understand from every possible person who is kind of like went through horrible situation. Every single time he went failure, he rise up, he failure, he rise up and he do this again. Might be kind of like a Thomas Edison would kind of like do this thing, but probably Thomas Edison kind of like a failed thousands time to kind of like a create the bulb, but still his kind of like expert is kind of like a making the bulb, not the kind of like a rest of the life. Okay, so probably I just need a kind of like somebody particular person who kind of like went through a very horrible situation, that who kind of like a face lot of problem in his life, and only that particular person who kind of like understand what is actually fate and chance would be like that. And I might kind of like a think that Leonardo is a kind of like a somebody person who might kind of like a somebody realize the consequences, the gravity of what is actually fate and chance would be that. But still it really required kind of like a knowledge and experience and things like that, and only that particular person who kind of like give that particular answer. Why am I talking really fast? I'm not really sure why. It's just like that. This is actually kind of like a morning. It's been almost like 11 degrees Celsius. That's why I'm kind of like talking really fast. Just talk slow. Okay. Talk slow. Okay, just talk slow. Just take a breathe. Talk slow. Okay. First of all, everything that I explained, I don't know why. Like basically just imagine, okay, I am at the rooftop. It's been almost like a 17:24 a.m. Okay, yeah. It's been 11 degrees Celsius. Okay, yeah. It's not night. It's a kind of like a morning, but it's a very fucking cold morning. Okay, I'm kind of like a walking on the rooftop wearing pajama and kind of like a shirts and kind of like a sweater. Okay, but still that sweater is not kind of like something not that good sweater. Still it's kind of like it's like getting a lot of kind of like a cold. Okay, I'm kind of like a shivering right now. All my hands in my pocket. Only one hand is kind of like a holding my mobile phone, and kind of like that hand is kind of like a paralyzed because of kind of the cold. Okay, yeah. And I just wanted to end this artifact as quickly as possible as it can, but still, while I kind of like give the answer, it kind of like felt really good, and somehow I don't know why I'm talking really fast. Same thing happened yesterday and same thing happened today too. Oh fuck, this is fucking cold. Okay, let's just start from beginning. Okay, all right. Be calm, be nice, relax. All right, proceed. All right, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Okay, why am I asking this question to myself? What if question is always really interested way to give an answer. It kind of like a force me to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality, when I try to construct that reality, I'm kind of like using my information and knowledge do I have to kind of like execute that answer and things like that. Okay, yeah. And while doing this thing, I feel really good. I feel that somehow kind of like I'm kind of like utilizing my information and knowledge to kind of like give the proper answer, and somehow it felt really good. I don't know how do I supposed to explain how I feel really good, but it felt good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or is not exactly wrong either. It is just my opinion. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it is just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I'm saying, or do not seek for any kind of like information that I'm saying. It's just my opinion, and opinion are subjective. Alright, now should we proceed? Now regarding about the question says that what if the fate and chance were interchangeable? Now as I explained, this question is how much difficult was it? But it's not really that difficult, but it's not really that simple as also. Okay, yeah. The answer would be that particular question is kind of like a depends on who do you ask and what kind of like a problem that he faced. Only and only that particular person who would kind of like understand what is actually fate and chance. Okay, yeah. Let's just understand by simple so that normal people or every person could kind of like understand. Okay, yeah. First of all, let's just understand what is actually fate. A fate means like that everything is actually fixed. Let's just say movie script. Okay, yeah. In the movie script, everything is actually fixed. What is actually happened? Every character, what he went through, what kind of like a problem that he faced, everything is kind of like a written. That is called a kind of like a fate. A kind of like a movie script would be kind of like a perfect example for that. Everything is actually written at somewhere, and every character is just following that particular script. That is called fate. Okay, yeah. In the fate, everything is kind of like a written. Every consequences, good, bad, right, wrong, every consequences are written. Okay, yeah. The character does not know that his life is written, but actually it's written. The character thinks that he is kind of like taking a chance, but he's not a chance. Is already written. Okay, yeah. So basically everything is kind of like a written. That is called a fate. Okay, yeah. Now let's talk about the chance. A chance means like that ki a possibility that what could be happened. Okay, yeah. As an example, a dice. Okay, yeah. In the dice there are kind of like a two numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Right. So basically you don't know what kind of like a simply possible result would gonna come. Okay, yeah. And every number comes with a kind of like a different consequences. Imagine a scenario that your entire life is kind of like a depend on the particular dice. Okay, yeah. The minimum number that you get, the less money that you get. The more number that you get, the more money that you get. Imagine six number kind of like a giving you millions of dollar. One number kind of like a give you kind of like a simply the like a loans and kind of like a things, and you don't really have less amount of money. Okay, yeah. So when you kind of like a die the roles, then you understand what is actually the gravity of that rule. You understand that ki even if you take kind of like a 2, then you might kind of like a fucked up. Yeah, then you will kind of like a get 6, then you will kind of like a really good. So basically while rolling that particular dice, there is a kind of like a chance would create, and that chance create another consequences about when you get 6 you are millionaire, when you get 1 you are broke, when you get 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, those are kind of like a represent the kind of like a growth and things like that. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like a simply gravity, this is the kind of like called as a kind of like a simply chance. All right, yeah. Now the question is that ki what if the fate and chance would be interchangeable? Means like that ki a fate would kind of like a change its position from chance, and chance's position to the fate. Like it's like basically it's not that easy to kind of like replace that particular thing, because the meaning of the fate is kind of like a represent everything is written. And so basically when I roll that particular dice, does it kind of like a return? Then probably it should supposed to be written the all the 6 consequences na. Okay, yeah. But still the fate will kind of like a root only one consequences, and that consequences is actually written. Let's just take an example. Okay, yeah. If I die the roll, okay, 1 to 6, now 4 will gonna come. Now fate is actually written that number 4 will gonna come. So the next of the possibility will not gonna come. Like even if I put thousands of time to kind of like a dice the roll, every time number 4 will gonna come. Every time number 4 will gonna come, and there is no changeable at all. And this is what kind of like something should happen. Okay, yeah. Because the fate is kind of like a represent only kind of like a things is kind of like a fix, but the activity is kind of like a represent the chance. The rolling the dice is a chance, is not a fate, is not a fix. So this is where kind of like some things happen. Now as I explain this thing, I just kind of like explain just a dice roll. Okay, yeah. But when you are kind of like going through life, they're kind of like realize that life is really fucked up. It's just not easy as kind of like some dice that you roll. Okay, because in the life you kind of like took the so many decision, and probably is this thing you, because of that decision you kind of like understand your life and things like that. Let me give you context. Okay, yeah. When I was kind of like somebody, I make a lot of mistake. My life is kind of like a change multiple times throughout the kind of like a multiple decision that I took. Okay, yeah. Take an example is that ki at the kind of like somebody the 12th standard, I didn't really get kind of like somebody marks. I get only 111 marks to kind of like somebody, like I was not really qualified enough to kind of like get into the engineering college, because I get almost like a 111 marks, and for it, if I wanted to go into the engineering college, it really required me 120 marks, but I didn't really get it. Okay, yeah. So those are written or kind of like some chance. Okay, let's take a thing like this is kind of like a something very simple thing, 0 or 1. So I didn't really get a chance, so I would kind of consider as a 0. Okay, so maybe this would kind of like something written. Okay, yeah. Like basically if it kind of like something written, then kind of like somebody I went to kind of like somebody the something like the kind of like somebody polytechnic college, diploma college, and engineer diploma college, and kind of like somebody tried to figure it out. It took me almost like a 2 year to complete 6 year of diploma. Okay, yeah. So basically is this thing I fail multiple times. So every time I get 0 0 0 0 0, I never really win in my entire period of lifetime. That what should I supposed to be considered as a kind of like a win and things like that. When I try to take a chance by myself, and then I have to realize that okay, I just have to do it by myself, everything like a effort and put and everything like a basically everything should supposed to do it by myself. So then it kind of like unlock my chance activity. Okay, yeah. A chance is that kind of like somebody I would decide what kind of like a best for me. Now basically when this actually happened, then fate, the power of the fate will kind of like a diminish. Now right now I don't really have a kind of like a simply 0 and 1, like a zero, like a lose and win. No, I have kind of like a chance to kind of like a multiples of possibility that how do I supposed to make my life as better as it can. Okay, so basically is this thing, when I kind of like decided that I wanted to kind of like make my life as better as I can at the age of 27, I decided to YouTube, not to do any kind of like some job. I kind of like shift my life to fate into chance. Okay, yeah. And then I kind of like took a chance that would I kind of like somebody make my life as better as it can, because it unlocked multiple possibilities. And when I unlock the multiple possibility, still it's not really sure that is it kind of like a fate or chance. Because if I'm seeing this kind of like a chance is really good, this chance is kind of like something really great, but fate is kind of like always decided that no, everything's actually written. Okay, yeah. Like same example is this thing that gaming content creation. When I try to create the gaming content creation, I spent almost like a 2 year of kind of like somebody create this gaming content creation. It doesn't really work out. It felt very very miserable. Okay, so this is kind of like a chance or fate. Like probably if I'm kind of like considered as a kind of like a chance that I kind of like a try, I didn't really kind of like understand this thing and I fail. Okay, so that is really good. But so is it chance or is it fate? So it's very hard to imagine this thing, because of that key. Probably I don't know what exactly the future life would be that. Okay, yeah. Let me give you context. Okay, let me give you the kind of like a multiples of possibility that what we went through. Okay, yeah. So basically, imagine that you are a person, since you are born, you kind of like take multiples of kind of like some choices. Okay, multiples of choices. Now you are actually looking at your life kind of like something in one single timeline. Okay, yeah. Now this is one single timeline that you are kind of like seeing the life is because of that you actually kind of like decided what is actually best for you, and you kind of like chose this particular path, and you kind of like seen this particular path. Okay, but this is the only path that you are kind of like seeing is kind of like highlighted, but rest of the kind of like a path is not highlighted because you don't really choose that thing. Okay, yeah. Now this is where it kind of like some magic came. Okay, yeah. If this the path that you are highlighted, is it your fate or is it your chance? Okay, it's very hard to understand this thing. Why? Because you don't really see the another consequences, the another branch that actually created because of you kind of like somebody you don't really choose. Let's just imagine if I went to engineering college, then what would be that particular life would be look like? Okay, yeah. So basically imagine what is actually that you are been through, what is actually kind of like somebody the choices that you make. You kind of like realize that there are so many possibilities would kind of like simply come up with a different option. Like every person kind of like went through very 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 different kind of like a chance, and very different kind of like a scenario went through, and basically this is where is kind of like a thing. This is where kind of like somebody our human mind is not able to understand this thing. Okay, yeah. I'm just kind of like a simply visual representation of that. Take your life, and your life is kind of like a simply tree. Okay, since you're born, it's kind of like a beginning, and when it kind of like a move further, you are kind of like a realize that your life is kind of like a went through very like a tree kind of like a creates multiple branches and kind of like a multiple things and that and that and that. It creates multiple consequences. So basically, at the end of life, you realize that your life is not just kind of like a simply one single kind of like a fate. It kind of like a multiples of chance and things like that. Okay, yeah, and this is where it kind of like a simply just very hard to understand, because should I supposed to take this chance, or should I supposed to take this route, or should I supposed to take this thing? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Okay, just imagine a visual representation. You are at kind of like somebody looking at a kind of like a board where kind of like a line which kind of like highlighted by the lights. Okay, yeah, and rest of the kind of like a light is not really highlighted because you don't really choose that thing. Okay, yeah. What if I'm kind of like simply highlight all the kind of like simply possibility that branches that you went through and things like that. Now, if I unlock all the branches, then you realize that you actually take a lot of branches. Like probably it will take almost like a millions of kind of like a possible result that went through. Millions. I'm talking about only one life. Take kind of like a millions of branches, millions of kind of like a possibility that our life would be kind of like somebody what would be that. Okay, and you realize that at one branch you might kind of like become a TV producer, you might kind of like an actor, or you might kind of like a beggar, or you might kind of like somebody is this thing, you end up with something like a die at early age, or probably there is a lot of kind of like some possibility would gonna come. And this is where kind of like really fucked up, because is this kind of like some life that we're kind of like looking at, is this life is a fate, or is this kind of like a life is a chance, or is this, what is exactly that? Okay, yeah, and this is where kind of like somebody it realized the kind of like somebody, that's why kind of like mentioned this thing. It really required a higher advanced intelligence of species or kind of like somebody human to understand this particular context, because the chance and fate is kind of like somebody, it's not really interchangeable. When it kind of like interchange, then entire system will gonna collapse, and this is where kind of like somebody really fucked up. Okay, yeah, it just kind of like somebody came with a single example that we kind of like crossed through at the beginning, like a dice roll. Okay, yeah, you might think that ki kind of like simply which number would gonna come, but you might understand this is your chance, but probably fate will understand, no, this is your fate. You will always get 4 number. But every time you kind of like simply getting the 4 number, it's only one possibility. In another possibility, you might get 1%. So you might get kind of like simply 1. So probably your fate would be changed. So probably what I'm trying to tell you is this thing, that every chance would kind of like become a fate, and every fate become a kind of like a chance. And this is where kind of like some really fucked up things. You still not really understand. Take another example. Let's take a simple example. Same with the dice. Okay, same with the dice. Okay, yeah. Now basically imagine you are in kind of like a Las Vegas, you are at the casino, you are kind of like a rolling a dice. Okay, yeah. Now that rolling a dice determine that how much wealth that you get. 1 is kind of like a nothing, 6 means kind of like a millions of money. Alright, yeah, understand. Now basically you are kind of like rolling the dice, and kind of like somebody is this thing that ki at side, like basically at next to you, there is a kind of like a fate person who is kind of like a somebody standing, and another person is kind of like somebody chance. Okay, yeah, this is kind of like a 2 person who's kind of like a sit next to you. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly is this thing? Now you didn't really roll, you have a dice. Okay, yeah, you have to roll that dice. Okay, yeah. So basically when you roll the dice, the chance would highlight it. The chance person is kind of like simply highlighted, because in the chance you would have a chance to get multiples of possibility. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, yeah. But till you get the answer, the fate will determine. Okay, yeah. Let's just say, okay, yeah, you roll the dice, number 4 will gonna come. Now fate will highlight it. Now basically why the chance is actually failure in this particular context? Because chance is only kind of like a give you the freedom till the before the result. When the result came, fate will highlight it. Fate will say that no, this is just 4 number that you are gonna come, and that's it. And you just realize that what is this thing? No, I don't want to see. I wanted to dice the roll again. And if you do this thing, still 4 gonna come. Still 4 gonna come. Why? Because chance is not highlighted again. Because chance is already give the opportunity to roll the dice. Even after you roll dice again and again, fate is always highlighted. It kind of like has chosen the number 4, and that's it. You kind of like do the millions of time to kind of like roll the dice. It always shows you number. Okay, yeah. So you might think this is a fate. No, it's not a fate. This is a fate in a chance. So what exactly happened? What exactly is this thing? Imagine this is kind of like a 6 number would gonna came. So there is a 6 of you. Okay, yeah. And there is a 6 fate and 6 chance. Okay, yeah. So every time you roll, every possibility would chance will gonna highlight it. Okay, yeah. And what number will gonna come? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It kind of like creates another branch. Okay, yeah. So if it create the 4, if it get the number 4, then how many times you kind of like a roll, it always kind of like shows the number 4, because you are in that particular timeline. When you are in the number 2, okay, when you get the number 2, how many times you roll, you will get the number 2. Okay, when you get number 3, how many times you will always get the number 3. So basically imagine a kind of like a line is split into the 6 part. Okay, yeah. And basically those 6 part became your fate. And every time try to do this thing, it will not gonna change. Every time we're gonna get 4, every time we're gonna get 2, every time we're gonna get 3. Like this is all kind of like somebody is this thing that everything is gonna fix. This is like a really fucked up thing happened. Okay, and this is where kind of like some chance and fate are kind of like an interchange at the moment, but still not really understandable. because still it's that I don't know. Like, basically my mind is not able to understand what exactly is this thing. Okay, because the fate and chance, when it interchangeable, or it does it interchangeable, I don't know. So this is where it kind of like a really fucked up, and this is our mind get collapsed. This is what kind of like simply we just not really understandable what is at least this thing. Okay, that's why I think that Leonardo might be kind of like a simply really good person who would kind of like simply give the proper answer regarding about the fate and chance would be that particular things. But still is this thing that key probably Leonardo might not also give the proper answer to. Okay, or Gautam Buddha or Jesus or probably nothing really at all, because still is this thing that key, if I try to understand, okay, dying a roll or kind of like a somebody rolling the dice is a very very simple example, creates a 6 consequences, and that consequences kind of like a creates its own fate that will not gonna change. And this is just a one thing. Your life, you are kind of like a choosing millions of decisions and things and that, and yeah. Okay, yeah. Imagine a scenario. You and your friend is a kind of like somebody going to somewhere by bike. Okay, yeah. Now basically, you both had an accident. Your friend is die. Okay, yeah. Now there is a kind of like a 2 possibility create. One possibility that your friend is die. Another possibility is that friend is not actually died. Okay, yeah. So when your friend is actually died, it kind of like a creates its own possibility. Then how many times you try to save your friend, you cannot save your friend because your friend is already died. Same thing happened with that kind of like rolling dice. Every time you try to roll the dice, it kind of like shows you 4, because the universe shows you number 4, and that's it. Your friend is died. You cannot kind of like go back, change the timeline. You cannot go that thing. You cannot do that thing. It's not possible. Your friend should supposed to be dying in this particular consequences, in this particular kind of like a branch, in this particular kind of like a possibility. Then your friend should supposed to be die, and this is what kind of like a fate is actually chosen. Okay, in another consequences, your friend is not died. Your friend is not died. Okay, yeah. So basically, how many times you try to kill your friend, by the way, your friend will gonna kind of like survive. Probably the universe chose that your friend should supposed to be alive. It's very hard to understand this thing, because like when I try to realize that is my life is kind of like written by somewhere, I realize that no, nothing at all. My life is not actually written. My life is kind of like written by my effort and things, and that everything that I do is kind of like a meant from me. It is that it's not kind of like me came from someone else. No one kind of like a written your life and things like that. But when I try to look at my life and realize that is it chosen or is it kind of like a fate, and this is very hard to understand. This is where kind of like somebody that key we might not understand, because our kind of like intellectual power or kind of like understanding of the human power is not kind of like a reach at that level so that you would understand is this kind of like a fate or chance, because we are not actually seeing the life in one single timeline. No, we are actually kind of like seeing the life at the present moment. We don't know what is going to happen in the future, and we understand the essential lesson from our past. And this is where life would be, probably. Not want to know is kind of like a somewhat something gives a limit to stop yourself, or maybe I don't know. Still is very hard to understand. Alright, this is just my opinion. Okay, yeah. Thank you.